to continue our discussion on the third chapter of first canto. 24th we are supposed to do today. I think we are done till 23 because we did not discuss about Lord Buddha. Correct? Yes, so we did not discuss that. Yeah, so we are still in this section from verse 6 to 29 and we are in this 6 to 27 where we are discussing the list of incarnations. So next two verses will discuss about Lord Buddha and Kalki. Tatah kalau sampravritte sammohaya suradvisham buddho namnanjana sutaha kikateshu bhavishyati. Then, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theists. Okay, so last we saw about Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. Now, after the start of Kali Yuga, Lord Buddha is the first incarnation. Or in this list, it's mentioned Lord Buddha appears first. So, Lord Buddha's purpose is stopping animal sacrifice in the name of Vedas. Okay. So, the time when Lord Buddha appeared, the people in general were atheistic and preferred animal flesh to anything else. Right? So, animal sacrifice is mentioned in the Vedic literatures. Okay. And as Kali Yuga progressed, then the Brahmanas, who were supposed to follow the Vedic literatures according to proper rules and regulations, it got turned, or with the influence of Kali, it became a means of satisfying one's desire to eat animal flesh. Okay, animal sacrifice was happening in the name of Vedic sacrifice, but the purpose was not as mentioned in the Vedic literatures, but the purpose was to gratify one's senses. And it has become rampant. Just on the pretext of the Vedas, animal killing has become rampant. So out of mercy, Lord Buddha appeared and he preached non-violence, taking pity on the poor animals. He preached that he did not believe in the tenets of the Vedas and stressed the adverse psychological effects incurred by animal killing. Okay. Because animal sacrifice is mentioned in the Vedas, and on that pretext only, people are rampantly doing this animal killing. So if you reject the cause, here the cause is the Vedas, according to those unqualified Brahmanas. See, it's mentioned in the Vedic literature, so therefore we can do it. But then the effect, animal killing, was not proper. Okay, so he said the cause itself is not correct. It's not proper. The Vedas are not to be believed upon. And he stressed on the psychological effects of animal killing. And less intelligent men of the age of Kali, who had no faith in God, followed his principles. And for the time being, they were trained in moral discipline and non-violence, the preliminary steps for proceeding further on the path of God realization. Okay. So, in the 7th chapter, 28th verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, was that verse? Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridamritaha. So, if someone is engaged in extreme sinful activities, then he will not be able to come to the platform of devotional service, which is actually the purpose of all the Vedic literatures. Okay, so it's like taking a thorn, using a thorn, right? We say like that. So what we are basically doing is we need to go to the purpose, the actual goal of Vedic literatures, but the Vedic literatures themselves are a kind of hindrance at this point of time in their progress, because the Vedas are being misused for their own nefarious purposes, which is animal killing. So what Lord Buddha did was, he said, no, don't do animal killing. Okay, Vedas are all imaginary. Okay, get them to a platform of moral discipline. And from that point onwards, then take them to the ultimate goal, which Lord Buddha did not do, but then Srila Prabhupada will explain how it happens. Okay, so what happened basically was the faithless people were made to believe in God in the form of Lord Buddha. That was the mercy of Lord Buddha. He made the faithless faithful to him. Okay, so even though he decried the Vedic literatures, but still, because Lord Buddha is the Supreme Lord himself, so therefore he made the faithless faithful to him. Okay. The foolish scholars of Vedic literature do not care to receive the transcendental message through the transcendental realized sources of disciplic succession, are sure to be bewildered. By them, the ritualistic ceremonies are considered to be all in all. So, in this context, okay, the context is that casual readers of the Vedas are misled by the flowery language of that system of knowledge. Okay, and because this transcendental knowledge, when it does not come in disciplic succession, then they are misled by the flowery language of that system, and because of that, they get misguided and they think that which is the means to be the goal itself. According to the Bhagavad Gita, Vedeshcha Sarve Ahameva Vedyaha, the whole system of the Vedas is to lead one gradually to the path of the Supreme Lord. The whole theme of Vedic literature is to know the Supreme Lord, the individual soul, the cosmic situation, and the relation between all these items. Okay. So, but unfortunately, the unauthorized scholars of the Vedas become captivated by the purificatory ceremonies only. So this is also, if you see the current system, there are people who follow Vedas through tradition, whatever they have received. According to the Vedic literatures, they follow different processes, samskaras, yagyas, and do things like that. But because they do not know the actual goal, therefore they are captivated only by these purificatory processes. Okay, now if a great yagya is done, they spend lots of money for doing big sacrifices, especially in Brahminical families. They do these big sacrifices, and that's it. That sacrifice itself, because Agni has been invoked and so many offerings have been made, so much dana has been made, and everybody is satisfied. It's a social function. Okay, for them, all these things is a social function. So these are meant to be purificatory activities, purificatory ceremonies for uplifting one's consciousness. But these ceremonies are engaged in not for uplifting one's consciousness, but for engaging or for bloating up their pride. Right? Okay, such a great religious ceremonies have been performed. Now these things are also discussed in the 16th chapter, the Divine and Demoniac in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna speaks. That they say that they have destroyed all their enemies, and in future whoever comes as their enemy, they'll destroy them also. Then they'll perform religious activities and take pride in that. Correct? That verse comes. So it's like this. Yes. Okay, so it's like this. So these Vedic sacrifices are meant to be purificatory ceremonies, but they are being used only for the purpose of increasing your pride, increasing the prestige, to gain some social status and things like that. So therefore, they are unauthorized people. Okay, they do not know the purpose of the Vedic literatures, and on top of that, the Brahmanas who are conducting them also are not qualified. So it does not lead to the actual result to which it is supposed to lead to, which is elevating people's consciousness, which does not happen. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about two types of animal killers. Okay. The soul is also sometimes called the animal or the living being. Therefore, both the slaughterer of animals and those who have lost their identity as souls are animal killers. Atmaha, correct? Atmaha, one who kills himself and one who kills animals, they are both on the same level, on the bodily concept. So animal killing on the pretext of the Vedas. It is nonsensical to say that animal killing has nothing to do with spiritual realization. By this dangerous theory, many so-called sannyasis have sprung up by the grace of Kali Yuga who preach animal killing under the garb of the Vedas. So now Prabhupada is referring to this Ramakrishna mission and Vivekananda. For them, okay, sannyasis can eat meat. Okay, that's how it is in them. And that's how Vivekananda and Ramakrishna they have preached that okay, the body should be maintained very nicely and it has got nothing to do with spiritual progress. But it is actually not like that. A sannyasi, how can he engage in eating meat? Okay, these things are there. So Srila Prabhupada is indirectly pointing out to them that it is nonsense whatever they are preaching to. The animal sacrifice as stated in the Vedas is different from the unrestricted animal killing in the slaughterhouse. Okay, so there are rules which you should already be aware of. There are rules. One has to go to the forest, then chant mantras, then kill, and then he has to offer what's major portion of whatever the flesh or the meat is to as charity, and only small portion he can take. Okay, so these are the regulations. But slaughterhouse has become rampant, where There's no question of sacrifice. It's just a question of sense gratification. Okay. Satisfying the taste buds. So this rejection of the Vedas by Lord Buddha was adopted in order to save people from the vice or sin of animal killing, as well as to save the poor animals from the slaughterhouse process of their big brothers who clamor for universal brotherhood, peace, justice and equity. But there is no justice when there is animal killing. So therefore Lord Buddha wanted to stop it completely. Okay, people people like the universal brotherhood. These concepts are there. That there should be peace, there should be no war, make love, no war. All these slogans are raised. But if they don't understand that by animal killing, they themselves are culpable, or they themselves are the culprits of conducting so much violence, then the nature will react. So whatever activities they do, the nature will also react for that. So therefore they have to suffer. There cannot be peace, justice or equality when there is animal killing. Okay, so in Srila Prabhupada's lectures also, we have heard so much that when animal killing is rampant, then we cannot expect that there will be no reaction from the nature. Because the material world is that whatever activities we do, then there must be a reaction for that also. Okay. Yeah. So now the gradual progress from Lord Buddha's atheistic philosophy to theism. Now how that happens? So Srila Prabhupada explains that Lord Buddha's philosophy is called atheistic because there is no acceptance of the Supreme Lord, and because that system of philosophy denied the authority of the Vedas. Okay, this astik, that principle of astikya, it basically means that one should have faith in the Vedic literatures. Okay. And because Lord Buddha decried the Vedic literatures, therefore his system, his philosophy is atheistic, even though he is the Supreme Lord. Demons who are always envious of the devotees of Godhead try to support cow killing or animal killing from the pages of the Vedas. And this is now being done by the modernized sannyasis. Okay. Again, referring to this Ramakrishna mission. So Lord Buddha preached the preliminary principles of the Vedas in a manner suitable for the time, and so also did Shankaracharya to establish the authority of the Vedas. Therefore, both Lord Buddha and Acharya Shankara paved the path of theism. And Vaishnava Acharya, specifically Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, led the people on the path towards the realization of going back to Godhead. Okay. So finally, Srila Prabhupada says that Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken around 5,000 years back. Okay. It was compiled by Vyasadeva not less than 5,000 years back. But Srimad Bhagavatam is predicting something which will happen at that particular time, some 2,000 years later, into Kali Yuga. Okay. Srila Prabhupada says that there are prophecies. There are prophecies which are mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam like this, and they are being fulfilled one after another. Okay. They will indicate the positive standing of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is without any trace of mistake, illusion, cheating and imperfection, which are the four flaws of the conditioned soul. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental. It does not have any flaws. So now the Buddhist principles are completely, it's totally deviated at this point of time. There are some sections also who follow these Buddhism principles very strongly, but not much. And the principles which Buddha preached was, they twist the meaning. What they say is that we should not engage in animal killing, but if an animal has already been killed, then what's the harm in consuming them? So I am not engaged in animal killing, but I am engaged only in eating them. So therefore, this is in line with Buddha's principle. They speak like this. Nonsense. Because we know Shastra, we understand, one who orders cow killing, one who is engaging in cow killing, or one who transports a cow, and all this, there is 7 or 9 types of people who are engaged in animal killing or cow killing. They are all implicated with sinful reactions. So anyway, this is nonsense. We will not find Buddhism the way it was taught by Lord Buddha. Next verse. Athasau yuga sandhyayam dasyuprayeshu rajasu janita vishnu yashaso namna kalkir jagatpatihi. Thereafter, at the conjunction of 2 yugas, the Lord of the creation will take his birth as the Kalki incarnation and become the son of Vishnu Yasha. At this time, almost all the rulers of the earth will have degenerated into plunderers. Pranavas means looters, just loot, that's all. So it's another foretelling concerning the advent of Lord Kalki. So he is to appear at the conjunction of the two yugas, namely at the end of Kali Yuga and the beginning of Satya Yuga. Okay, so Kali Yuga starts for 4,30,000 years, out of which we have completed a little more than 5,000 years. Right? 5,500, somewhere around that, and therefore around 4,27,000 years still left before Lord Kalki comes. Okay. And the name of his father and other details are also mentioned. Okay. So this completes the list of the incarnations. Okay, all the Leela Avataras. When Sula Goswami says, Avatara hi sankhyeya hare satvanidher dvijaha yatha vidasina kulya sarasasyu sahasrashaha. O Brahmanas, the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, like rivulets flowing from inexhaustible sources of water. Okay. So in his purport, Srila Prabhupada explains about the incarnations, and he says that this list of incarnations is given here is partial. Okay, now Sutta Goswami, when he was asked to recite about the Leela Avataras, then he gave this list of incarnations. But then he claims, then he says, the next verse itself, that no way this list is complete. Okay, what I have told you is just some of the list, some of the incarnations, but there are as many rivulets, as there are many rivulets in the flowing of water, that many Lord's incarnations are also there, which is unlimited, basically. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes, he says that there are other incarnations also, like Hayagriva, Hari, Hamsha, Krishnigarbha, Vibhu, Satyasena, Vaikuntha, Sarvabhauma, Vishwaksena, Dharmasetu, Sudhama, Yogeshwara, Brihadbanu, and so many others who have appeared in the bygone ages. And Sri Prahlad Maharaj said in his prayer that you manifest as many incarnations as there are species of life, namely the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the men, the demigods, etc., just for the maintenance of the faithful and the annihilation of the unfaithful. Okay, so yeah, vegetable is also there. How that happens? We don't know. Okay, but yeah, it's there. Okay, yeah. So the incarnation of the Lord in Kali Yuga is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Srila Prabhupada speaks about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here, and he says that in the Brahma Samhita, it is indirectly said that although there are many incarnations of the Lord, such as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and many others, the Lord himself sometimes incarnates in person. Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, are not therefore incarnations, but are the original source of all incarnations. Okay, we discussed this in our last class, that Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they come directly from the spiritual world. They don't come through Shiva Dakshina Vishnu. So the Lord is the inexhaustible source for innumerable incarnations which are not always mentioned. Such incarnations are distinguished by specific extraordinary feats which are impossible to be performed by any living being. Okay. The innumerable incarnations of the Lord are manifested all over the universes constantly without cessation, as water flows constantly from water pores. So not only the Lord's incarnations are many, but they are continuous. They keep on coming. Okay, in all the different universes, there are millions and trillions of universes. In each of the universes, the Lord's incarnation keeps on happening continuously, without stopping. Okay. From our point of view, our time, we see, okay, the Lord is not there. 4,27,000 years to wait till Lord Kalki comes. But in the context of eternal time, or the time being, or the time of Lord Brahma, or even this manifestation of this universe, this period is very small. Okay, so in that way the Lord's incarnation keep on happening in different species of life, in different universes, and continuously. And even from this point of view also, when we say Krishna's name is non-different from Krishna, so Krishna has incarnated as his name, right? Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's there. Kali Kale Krishna Rupe, Kali Kale Namrita Krishna Avatar. Okay. So Krishna has descended in his name, and this name is non-different from Krishna himself, and this name comes directly from the spiritual world. Okay. So yes, so the incarnation is still there. Whenever we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the Lord is there in front of us. Okay, so the incarnation is still there. Okay. So Krishna is present with us right now. Every moment we chant His name and when we study Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is also non-different from Krishna. 27. Vishayo manavo deva manuputra mahojasah kalah sarve harireva saprajapataya smritaah. All the rishis, the manus, the demigods and the descendants of Manu who are especially powerful are plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. This also includes the Prajapatis. So Prabhupada says, those who are comparatively less powerful are called Vibhuti, and those who are comparatively more powerful are called Avesha incarnations. And Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that now, since the Leela avatars have been described, now the Vibhutis are described here. The Rishis, the Manus, the demigods, descendants of Manu. Like this. Those who are powerful, they have the potency of the Lord. So any power or any glory which is manifested in this material world, it's the potency of the Lord itself which is getting reflected, correct? Okay, so in that way, they are also Vibhutis. They are explained as Vibhutis of the Lord. We have seen this in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, right? Okay, so that's the 28th verse. Ete cham shakalah pumsa krishnastu bhagavan swayam indrari vyakulam lokam vridayanti yuge yuge. All of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. Okay, so it's a very, very famous and very important verse also. And at the start of the Bhagavad Sandarbha, Sri Jiva Goswami spends quite some time to explain this sloka. Because it's called as Paribhasha Sutra. And this Paribhasha Sutra comes from basically Jiva Goswami. So he explained that this Paribhasha Sutra, this verse determines, or this verse establishes the understanding of the whole Bhagavatam. And not only Srimad Bhagavatam, but of the whole Vedic literatures also. Okay, so everything that comes in Bhagavatam, which is the essence of Vedic literatures, and all the Shastras, okay, they all should be understood from this perspective. Okay, so Paribhasha Sutra is this. Okay, so this is what establishes the complete understanding of the devotional service or Krishna consciousness movement. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada here, in his purport, he speaks mostly about incarnations and how Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Okay, so we'll see some points which he mentions. He says that Avatara means one who descends. Okay, so one who comes down is called as an Avatara. Okay, so sometimes the Lord comes himself, sometimes his different plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions or his differentiated portions directly or indirectly empowered by him descend to this material world to execute certain specific functions. So when we speak about these plenary portions and parts of the plenary portions, we are basically speaking about the Vishnu Tattvas. Okay, expansions and the expansions. Okay, like this. And when we say differentiated portion, then it's the Jiva. Okay, because Jiva is differentiated from the Lord. Okay, it's an Amsha, who is directly or indirectly empowered by him. Directly means Avesha, indirectly means Vibhutis. Okay, and they descend to the material world to execute certain specific functions. Okay, when they are partly manifested through the plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions, it should be noted that certain manifestations of his different powers are required for those particular functions. Okay, so when it's an expansion or partly manifested, so the full potency of the Lord is not manifested, only partly manifested, then only that much amount of opulence or power or strength or majesty or whatever manifestation is there, that much is only required for that particular purpose, for that particular Leela. Okay. But Krishna embodies the opulence of. When he comes not as partly manifested, okay, or differently manifested. Nothing of that sort. It's not like Krishna is a jiva who is empowered by the Lord. No, none of that nonsense. Okay. When Krishna comes directly from the spiritual world, and he has all the potencies of all the incarnations in full within him. So he manifests everything. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada says, for example, Lord Parshuram and Lord Nrsimha displayed unusual opulence by killing the disobedient Kshatriyas 21 times and killing the greatly powerful atheist Hiranyakashipu. Okay. And then he explains about Hiranyakashipu. The Lord's empowered incarnation Narada and plenary incarnation Varaha, as well as indirectly empowered Lord Buddha, created faith in the mass of people. The incarnations of Rama and Dhanvantari displayed his fame, and Balaram, Mohini and Vamana exhibited his beauty. So different incarnations are exhibiting different features, transcendental features of the Lord. Okay, this is a list that Srila Prabhupada gives. And he says, Dattatreya, Matsya, Kumara and Kapila exhibited his transcendental knowledge. Nara and Narayana Rishis exhibited his renunciation. So all the different indirectly or directly empowered incarnations of the Lord manifested different features. But Lord Krishna, the primeval Lord, exhibited the complete features of Godhead. And thus it is confirmed that he is the source of all other incarnations. Okay. So Lord Krishna, he exhibited everything. So therefore he is the source of all other incarnations. His pastimes with the gopis are all displays of transcendental existence, bliss and knowledge. Although these are manifested apparently as sex love. The specific attraction of his pastimes with the gopis should never be understood. Should never be misunderstood. Okay. Should be understood but not be misunderstood. Okay. According to Srila Jiva Goswami's statement, in accordance with authoritative sources, Lord Krishna is the source of all other incarnations. It is not that Lord Krishna has any source of incarnation. All the symptoms of the Supreme Truth are present in full, are present in the person of Lord Shri Krishna. In this stanza, the word Swayam is particularly mentioned to confirm that Lord Krishna has no other source than himself. Right? Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. Swayam is he himself is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, there is no one who is above him. There is no one who is equal to him. He is Asamurdhva. Then Srila Prabhupada speaks about the expansions of Krishna, and he says that he himself has expanded himself. He made his parts, portions and particles as Swayam Rupa, Swayam Prakasha, Tadekatma, Prabhava, Vaibhava, Vilasa, Avatara, Avesha and Jivas. Okay, so Jivas are also expanded from Krishna only. All provide with innumerable energies just suitable to the respective persons and personalities. Okay, and then he gives this that there are totally 64 principal attributes which can be attributed or which can be assigned or which are present in the Supreme Lord, the Samam Gunam Krishna, and of which 93% are available or are present in the other Vishnu Tattva forms. Okay, and 84% of these attributes are there in Lord Shiva, and the Jiva can at the max attain 78% of these attributes. And for us, for those in this material world who are conditioned, we have very, very less. It's very, very minute. We do not possess. We do have, like in our transcendental, in our constitutional position, we can come up to the level of 78%. But the Jiva can never be, the living being can never possess attributes like Shiva, Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So it's not possible. Abode of Lord Krishna, above all other spiritual planets, is called Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan. And the perfected living beings, by developing 78% of the above attributes in fullness, can enter the planet of Krishna Loka after leaving the present material body. Okay. See, for this particular verse, there are so many references. Our acharyas have spoken a lot about this. Okay, so it's but this is not within the scope of the study, so we'll not be able to discuss all of them. But a lot has been commented on this one. Srila Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentaries, it's quite a big commentary that he has, which he explains quotes from different shastras as to how Krishna is the Supreme Lord. He is Bhagavan himself. Okay, and everything else should be seen in that particular context. Okay.
Bro, what is this Samam Bonam we speak like Prabhupada?
Yeah, Samam Bonam is it's a totality of everything. Okay, so within him, everything is present. Okay, it's like the definition of the absolute truth. So Samam Bonam means because he manifests everything. Okay, he has beauty, strength, opulence, all those 6 features and his transcendental pastimes. So everything is included within him. All the rasa is included, all the established truths, the tattvas are included within him. Okay, all the jivas are included within him, his energies are within him. Okay, his pastimes, his expansions, everything, whatever we can conceive of, whatever we cannot conceive of, whatever we can think, we cannot think, whatever is within our reach, beyond our reach, nothing is, apart from Krishna, nothing is beyond him. It's not like, something is beyond him. This Mayavadi sometimes say that, Radha Krishna, and then on top of that, they put an Om. They do that. Nonsense. It's not proper. So there's nothing beyond Supreme Lord. There's nothing beyond him. So this is Samam Bonam, this ultimate truth. It's a summation of everything. There's nothing beyond him. He is the absolute truth. This is what it means. Samam Bonam is what it means.
This phrase is made by Prabhupada.
I think I don't know the dictionary is not there. Okay. Samam Bonam is the supreme good in which all moral values are this is a dictionary definition. Highest good or supreme good. The supreme or highest good usually in which all other goods are included or in which everything is derived. Okay, now there are so many things which are explained. See, the main, you can say, right, everything comes from him. Okay, from whom everything is derived. Everything that is there, it is derived only from Krishna. So we can take that as an example. Etymologically, it is a Latin word. Okay, it's a Latin word, Samam Bonam, originated in 1563. Okay. But it's probably from the Latin or Greek philosophical time point. But this word Samam Bonam is completely applicable only to Sri Krishna, because no other philosophy which does not accept Krishna as a source of everything or as Krishna as the absolute truth can use the definition of Samam Bonam in its completeness. Okay, only when this word Samam Bonam can be used only for Lord Sri Krishna, because he is the source. For he is the absolute truth, right? Okay. Yeah, text 29. Janma guhyam bhagavato ya etat prayato naraha sayam pratar grinan bhaktya dukkha grama vimuchyate. Whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord, devotion in the morning and in the evening, gets relief from all miseries of life. Because the Lord's incarnations are transcendental to the modes. Okay. And the miseries of life are primarily because of the modes, because of the interaction of the modes. So whoever recites and whoever meditates, when we meditate on the pastimes of the Lord, then automatically we feel happy. Suprasidati. Right? So simply knowing factually the mysterious way of the Lord's incarnation in this material world can liberate one from the material bondage. Okay, janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatpataha tekva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so arjuna. One who knows the janma and karma of the Lord gets liberated. Okay. The word vimukti or liberation indicates that the Lord's birth and activities are all transcendental. Otherwise, simply by reciting them, one could not attain liberation. Right? It's logical, it's proper. Because the Lord's activities and birth are transcendental, therefore one can attain liberation by reciting them. So those who glorify or those who recite the glories, the janma and karma of mundane people, they'll remain in this mundane world, because those who are being glorified, they are in the mundane realm. Those who are glorifying him, they are in the mundane realm. And the activity of glorification is also on the mundane realm. All influenced only by the 3 modes of material nature. There's no factual reality behind it. Okay, so the glorification of the Lord, his recitation of his activities and birth is what delivers one. It's what takes one to liberation. That's why in Bhagavatam, all the narrations will be about the glories of the Lord. Okay. So this we saw about this 10 aspects of a Purana. So all these 10 aspects of Purana are in relation to Krishna. And that's why Bhagavatam is pure, it's transcendental to the three modes. Because everything is being discussed in relationship to the absolute truth. So this completes our section on the incarnations of the Lord. Okay. So from verse 30 to 32, now in this list of incarnations, Sutta Goswami did not explain about the universal form of the Lord. Right? So now he would address that, okay, why the universal form of the Lord is not mentioned, and how the universal form of the Lord is actually a conception, it's a material conception on the transcendental Lord, and therefore it is imaginary. Okay, so he will do that in 3 verses from 30 to 32. So we'll see that. Etadrupam bhagavato hyarupasya chidatmanaha maya gunair virachitam mahadadi bhiratmani. The concept of the Virat, universal form of the Lord, in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Okay. Virat Rupa of the Lord and material forms of the conditioned souls. Okay, Srila Prabhupada says the conception of the Lord, known as the Vishwarupa or the Virata Rupa, is particularly not mentioned along with the various incarnations of the Lord, because all the incarnations of the Lord mentioned above are transcendental, and there is not a tinge of materialism in their bodies. Right? So all these incarnations, they are not contaminated by the modes of material nature. The Virat Rupa is conceived for those who are just neophyte worshippers. Okay. So this Virat Rupa will be explained in the second canto. Okay. It's there in the first 1 or 2 chapters. Okay. So at that time we'll discuss. In the Virat Rupa, in the Virat Rupa, the material manifestations of different planets have been conceived as his legs, hands, etc. Okay. And these descriptions are for the neophytes, because the neophytes cannot conceive of anything beyond matter. So if we speak about transcendental subject matters, it's not understandable to them. Therefore, to them, this kind of conception is presented. As Paramatma or Super Soul, the Lord is within each and every material form, even within the atoms. But the outward material form is but an imagination, both for the Lord and for the living being. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks also for the living being. Okay, the Supreme Lord, his Virat Rupa, it's an imaginary, it's a conception. And the living entity's body is also, it's a material conception. Okay, because the living being is also transcendental. The soul is also transcendental. So the outward material form is in one way an imagination. Okay, so our material form, Srila Prabhupada says, is an imagination. But actually no, is it imagination? It looks like imagination. It doesn't look like imagination. It looks quite real. Okay, it's imagination such that that this material form is temporary. It's not permanent. Just like the dreams, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of dreams. Correct? In dreams, we see so many things and we experience also. It's not just like we are sitting and seeing something and we are detached from it. The dreams are not like that. When a dream is very intense, then we undergo the emotions also, which are related to that particular dream. Correct? So when we do that, then we relate to that dream and we feel quite, we identify with the dream. Okay, that happens. So this material form, but the dreams are temporary. Correct? The dreams are not eternal, or it's not real. It's real in the sense that the experience seems real. Okay, but when we wake up, the dream is over and it's imaginary. We say, it's there in the realm of the mind. It's temporary. There's no factual reality behind it. And sometimes even laugh at the kind of dreams that we get. Right? If a scary dream, then we get it's humorous that way. Okay. So that way, because the material form, the material body is also temporary, and the material manifestations are also temporary. Therefore, the forms that we have is actually an imagination from the perspective of the absolute realm. Okay. From the absolute realm's perspective, Our material forms are imaginary in that sense because they are not eternal. Okay, they do not remain through the time. They are not eternal. Okay. So that's Srila Prabhupada says it's an imagination. Yeah. Text 31. यथा नभसि मेघौघो रेणुर्वा पार्थिवो निले एवं द्रष्टरि दृश्यत्वम् आरोपितमबुद्धिभिः. Clouds and dust are carried by the air, but less intelligent persons say that the sky is cloudy and the air is dirty. Similarly, they also implant material bodily conceptions on the spirit self. Right? So, air is, we cannot see air, but dust in the air can be seen. Okay. So there we project this conception that air is dusty or the sky is cloudy. Oh, you see, it's a cloudy sky, we say. Right? But is the sky really cloudy? No, it's not like that. But then we superimpose these concepts on something which is beyond our reach. Okay, it's like air or sky. These things are beyond our reach. But we give these conceptions to them. So similarly, the bodily conceptions, the material conceptions are also like this. It's an analogy is being explained. So it's like this. The living entity is beyond. It's transcendental. But these material designations or bodily conceptions are superimposed or are conceived of by us because of illusion. So Prabhupada says, we look to the outward covering of the body or subtle mind of the living being, but we cannot see the spiritual spark within the body. So we have to accept the living being's presence by the presence of his gross body. Correct? That's the only way. Similarly, those who want to see the Lord with their present material eyes or perceive him with the other material senses are advised to meditate on the gigantic external feature called the Virata Rupa. Okay. I think this is an example. When the president goes out in his particular car, we say there is the president. But then the car is not the president is within that car. Right? But even though the president is within the car, we designate the car as, okay, this is the president who is going like this. So we are conceiving of a concept. But factually speaking, definitely the car is not the president. Okay. The president is within that car, who is not to be seen from outside. So with this analogy, it's explained that so the conception, the material conception, both on the Lord as well as the living entity, are all imagination. Okay. And then Srila Goswami says, Atah param yad avyaktam avyudha guna brahmitam adrishta shruta vastutvad sajivo yat punarbhavaha. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety, otherwise he could not have repeated births. Okay. Srila Prabhupada explains, as the gross cosmic manifestation is conceived as the gigantic body of the Lord, so also there is the conception of his subtle form, which is simply realized without being seen, heard or manifested. But in fact, all these gross or subtle conceptions of the body are in relation with the living beings.
Subtle form of the Lord or Vishnu?
Subtle form of the Lord. Okay. Subtle form of the Lord and subtle form of the Jiva also. Okay, so this we will reconcile. See, there is a gross conception of the Lord and there is also a subtle conception of the Lord. Okay, which is without any formal shape, is unseen, unheard and unmanifest. But this can be understood from the plane of the living entities who undergo repeated birth and death, okay, because of the presence of the subtle form. Okay. See, for a person to undergo who goes repeated birth and death? The living entity. Okay, the living entity, the soul, undergoes repeated birth and death. So, if there is no soul, is there a conception of repeated birth and death? No. Right? So this verse should be approached in that manner. Without the living entity, there is no conception of repeated birth and death. So therefore, when repeated birth and death happens, that means that there is a living entity. Okay, and this living entity is beyond the gross and subtle concept. Is beyond the gross and the subtle. So similarly, the Lord also has a subtle form and a gross form. The Lord does not undergo repeated birth and death, but from a living being, the perspective here is that because repeated birth and death proves that there is a living entity, okay, who has a gross and a subtle form. So, because the universal form or the Virat Rupa is the gross manifestation, and then there is a subtle manifestation also, and the living being, or in this case the Lord, is beyond this gross and subtle manifestation.
What is the subtle manifestation of the Lord?
Subtle manifestation we will see in the second canto. When the creation happens and this prototype has to be created, which is not manifested. So it's Adi Devatas are created, and only the Devatas take from the prototype Adi Devatas, and they do their activities of administration of the universe. We'll see all these things in detail, but there are two conceptions. There is a gross conception, which is manifested. These mountains are the bones of the Lord, okay, and the trees are like the hair on the Lord. And his eyes are the sun and the moon, okay, and there are so many other things like that. There's universal forms. Yeah. So this is the gross conception, because mountains you can see, trees you can see, and when you see the trees, then you can think, oh, these are the bodily hairs of the Lord. And when you see the mountains, oh, these are stacks of bones of the Lord. Like this, you relate the gross conception with the Virat Rupa of the Lord. Okay, and that way, because this gross manifestation is forcing you to think about the Lord, some purification is there. But that does not mean that the stack or the mountains are actually the bones of the Lord. It's an imagination. But that imagination, it behooves you, or it makes you think or remember the Lord like this. So that way, it helps the neophyte worshippers. The subtle conception is very difficult to understand, even though it is there. That's why it's said that it's without formal shape, it is unseen, it's unheard, and it's unmanifest. So to understand the subtle form is very difficult. Okay, and it is not mentioned that the subtle form also is worshipped by the neophyte worshippers. No, the Virat Rupa is worshipped by the neophyte worshippers. But the subtle form is there, which is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. But it is there. Otherwise, the universal functioning would not be proper. It would not be complete. The creation would not be complete.
Is it Brahma-Jyoti?
No, it's not Brahma-Jyoti. Brahma-Jyoti is spiritual. It is transcendental. Okay. It's not Brahma-Jyoti. Brahma-Jyoti is direct effulgence of the Lord's body. So Brahma-Jyoti is actually spiritual. It's not material. Okay, so the living beings passing away from the body does not mean that there is no existence of the living soul. It is there. It is there. Otherwise, how can he repeat his births again and again? Right? This is what we discuss now. The conclusion is that the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form, which is neither gross nor subtle, like that of the living being. Just like the living being is transcendental, so from that analogy we also understand that beyond the gross and subtle conceptions of the Supreme Lord, the material conception of the Supreme Lord, he exists beyond that. He is transcendental to it. Just like the living entity is transcendental to it. Okay. So from 33rd verse to 39th, speaking about realizing the Lord and his glories. Sutta Goswami then speaks about how, what actually means by self-realization, what are the glories of the Lord, how the Lord is unknowable to mental speculation, and then he concludes by saying that devotional service reveals the Lord. Okay. So now, if you see the flow in this 30th verse is speaking about the Virat form of the Lord. Okay. And 31st and 32nd verse, they also introduce the concept of the self, the soul. Okay, even that aspect is also coming. Even though in terms of analogy, to explain the transcendental form of the Lord, but still it's mentioned that the soul, just like he undergoes repeated birth and death, and that proves the presence, his presence. Similarly, the Lord is also transcendental. Now, if someone has to realize both, you have to realize the Lord as well as the living entity. No, then self-realization basically means realizing the Lord also. So both go together, hand to hand. They both go together. Okay. So this is what 33 and 34th verse will speak of. Self-realization means seeing the Lord. Okay. 33rd, correct? Yeah, 33rd. Yatre me sadasadrupe pratishiddhe swasamvida avidyayatmani krite iti tad brahma darshanam. Whenever a person experiences by self-realization that both the gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self, at that time he sees himself as well as the Lord. Okay. Identifying the actual self from imagined self. Srila Prabhupada writes, the coverings take place due to ignorance. Such coverings are never effective in the person of the personality of Godhead. Knowing this convincingly is called liberation or seeing the absolute truth. Okay, this is important. If someone knows this convincingly, that the Supreme Lord is, the coverings, the material coverings are never effective on the person of the personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead never comes under the influence of ignorance. The Jiva, because of covering, can be ignorant, but the Supreme Lord, even though he is present within this material world, is never covered by the material nature. It's never covered by ignorance. Okay, that is not possible. And convincingly knowing this is called liberation or seeing the absolute. Self-realization means becoming indifferent to the needs of the gross and subtle bodies and becoming serious about the activities of the self. Right? So, self-realization and liberation, both are defined very clearly by Srila Prabhupada. He says that by becoming indifferent to the needs of the gross and subtle bodies and becoming serious about the activities of the self, then self-realization is attained. Okay. So therefore, a man who is engaged in the activities of the self is called Jivan Mukta, or liberated person, even in the conditional existence. He may be within this material world, but he is Jivan Mukta, just like the Lord. Krishna is there, Lord is there within this material world, but is he contaminated? Is he influenced by the modes? Does he have to undergo repeated birth and death? No, he is eternally liberated. So similarly, when the Jiva understands his constitutional position, he realizes his constitutional position, okay, and is engaged in the activities of the self, which is devotional service, then he is called as Jivan Mukta. And he is liberated even though he is there within this material realm. Just like the Lord is liberated even though he is within the material realm. So the Jiva attains the qualities of the Lord of being liberated even though he is there within the material realm. Quantitatively, it's a different question. But the quality of liberation is attained by the Jiva also, who is engaged only in the activities of the self, activities of the soul. Clear? Clear? Okay. So living beings' desires put him under either the internal or external potency of Krishna. So this is something which we should understand very clearly. So our desires will determine whether we want to be under the influence of the material energy or whether we want to be under the influence of the superior energy of the Lord, the internal energy of the Lord. When the living being desires to be an enjoyer of material energy, illusory phenomena, the Lord covers the living being in the mystery of forgetfulness, and thus the living being misinterprets the gross body and subtle mind to be his own self. Right? It's very important to understand. Okay. That the Lord covers the living being in the mystery of forgetfulness. Without forgetting, we discussed this, I think in last class or in the class before that without covering of this material nature, it is not possible to exist in the material atmosphere or to enjoy matter, correct? Or to experience material happiness or even material distress also. To experience happiness as well as distress, which is material, the living entity must be covered by this illusion, by the illusory energy of the Lord, which will lead to his forgetfulness. Forgetfulness of what? Forgetfulness of his eternal position, of his constitutional position, of his swarupa, of his nature. Only when he forgets that, then he can be in this material world, he can try to enjoy this material world, he can undergo miseries in this material world, and he can also experience happiness of this material nature. Otherwise, it is not possible. Okay. So, when the living being desires to be an enjoyer of the material energy, the Lord sends him to the material world and covers him with this mystery of forgetfulness. Okay. It's a mystery. Right? It's a mystery of forgetfulness because now we are striving so hard to revive our consciousness. There's so much effort is there. But actually, it's not something which we are trying to acquire. It is something which is our eternal nature. But still, we are struggling so much. So it's kind of mysterious, how this forgetfulness works. It is so hard and it is so thick. This covering is so thick that we have to struggle so much to just come out of it, even though it is our eternal nature. Okay, that's mysterious. Even though it's something is, it's our eternal nature, still we have to struggle so much just to come out of it. So that amount of covering, or that amount of illusion energy is acting upon us, and this we have to remove. When the living being prays to the Lord for deliverance from the clutches of forgetfulness, the Lord by His causeless mercy removes the living being's illusory curtain. Okay. So therefore, which proves that it's not possible, to get liberated, or it's not possible to reach the transcendental platform without the Lord's help or without His mercy. Okay, I think it's there in one of the purports also. And then we'll see. Okay. So 34th. Yadyesho parata devi maya vaisharadi matihi sampanna eviti vidur mahimni swe mahiyate. If the illusory energy subsides and the living entity becomes fully enriched with knowledge by the grace of the Lord, then he becomes at once enlightened with self-realization and thus becomes situated in his own glory. Okay. So, the purport. His transcendental energy acts according to his omnipotency. The same energy acts as external, internal and marginal energies. And by his omnipotency, he can perform anything and everything through the agency of any of the above energies. He can turn, the Supreme Lord Krishna can turn the external energy into internal by his will. Therefore, by his grace, the external energy which is employed in illusioning those living beings who want to have it subsides by the will of the Lord in terms of repentance and penance for the conditioned soul. Right? Okay, so Krishna can convert external energy into internal energy into external energy. He can do whatever he wants. So, when a living being wants to come out of the external energy, out of the influence of the external energy, then Krishna can turn it into internal energy. And then he becomes Devi Prakritim Ashritaha. He takes shelter of the internal potency of the Lord. And that way he becomes elevated to transcendental position. And a simple analogy. The example of electrical energy is very appropriate in this connection. The expert electrician can utilize the electrical energy for both heating and cooling by adjustment only. Electrical energy can be used for both the purposes, for heating as well as cooling. Even though the source is electrical energy. Okay, so that Srila Prabhupada says that the Supreme Lord can convert by his expertise internal to external and external to internal. Okay. Verse 35. Evam janmani karmani hyakarturrajanasya cha varnayanti sma kavayo veda gukhyani hritpate. Thus learned men describe the births and activities of the unborn and inactive, which are undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. He is the Lord of the heart. This is the glories of the Lord. Okay. Glories of the Lord, and it also includes the focus is on the glories of the Lord because his birth is described even though he is unborn. His activities are described even though he is inactive. Okay. So that is how it is. So therefore they are undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. and He is the Lord of the heart. So these are the glories of the Lord. He said, Janma karma cha me divyam, but then He is ajanma. He does not have any karma also. So that is why one who understands the transcendental position, the transcendental level, the absolute level, the spiritual realm of the Lord, and in which he takes his janma and performs his pastimes, then he gets liberated. If his janma and karma are on the same level as a mundane person, then there is no question now. There is no question of going even an inch beyond this material world. Both the Lord and the living entities are essentially all spiritual. Therefore, both of them are eternal, and neither of them has birth and death. Okay. But the difference is that the so-called births and disappearance of the Lord are unlike those of the living beings. The living beings who take birth and then again accept death are bound by the laws of material nature. Right? But the Lord is not bound by the laws of material nature. His appearance and disappearance are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. This internal potency of the Lord is spiritual. So his janma and karma are all under the influence or under the, they are demonstrations of the internal potency. They are demonstrations of the spiritual energy. Okay. So therefore they are transcendental. So when we say he takes birth, then he takes birth under his internal potency, by his internal potency. He is unborn because he is not materially born. He does not have any material influence. His activities are all transcendental and spiritual. He is inactive because there are no material activities which can be attributed to him. So this is his glory. So even though he appears to be taking birth and performing lots of activities, but still he is unborn and inactive. And especially when people read this Mahabharata, they have, oh, Krishna is born, Krishna is a great politician, Krishna performed activities like this, his morality should be questioned, he did not follow proper moral principles, Karna should not have been killed like this. So many questions people say. And finally they say that because a hunter shot an arrow at Krishna's heels, therefore he left his body, or therefore he was killed. But then even we will not get killed if an arrow is shot in our heels. We will do some operation and be ready with it. So these are pastimes of the Lord. Okay. But foolish people who do not know the transcendental nature of the Lord, they say like this: because a hunter shot an arrow at his legs, therefore he was killed. And then who dies because of that? So even that way, even from this mundane perspective also, it's foolishness. That way. But because they cannot understand, they cannot comprehend the transcendental nature of the Lord, they are illusioned. They are so bewildered that they say that even that which cannot be a cause of anybody's death becomes the cause of Krishna's death, so-called apparent death. You can see how foolish or how bewildered these people are. But when people say with this Mahabharata, this mundane vision, then they go through these kind of conceptions. They have these kind of conceptions where they put or they bring down Krishna on the same level. But the whole idea of these verses is that even though Krishna is within the material world, he is transcendental to it. The Supreme Lord, even his expansions, the incarnations are also transcendental to it. What to speak of the Supreme Lord himself? Bhagavan Swayam, what to speak of him? If his incarnations are themselves transcendental, what about the source of all incarnation? Obviously he is transcendental. How can it be put into this mundane realm? So therefore his birth and activities are all transcendental. And he is unborn and inactive from the materialistic point of view. Okay. Simplify meditation on such activities, one can attain realization of Brahman and thus become liberated from material bondage. So therefore, we should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form. Right? The Bhagavan feature of the Lord is the most convenient and palatable form, and it also gives the highest realization of the absolute truth. So why nobody should take that? Everybody should take it. Okay. 36. Sava idam vishvam amogha leelaha vijatyavatyatina sajjatesmin bhuteshu chantarhita atmatantraha shadvargikam jigrahati shadguneshaha. The Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of the six senses and is fully omnipotent with six opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them, and annihilates them without being in the least affected. He is within every living being and is always independent. Okay. He is called Amogalila, which indicates that there is nothing lamentable in his creation. Those who create disturbance in his creation are themselves disturbed. Okay, so this is the understanding. He is connected with this material creation very superficially, as one smells odor without being connected with the odorous article. Right? This is also given in the Bhagavad Gita. How the living entity transmigrates. Right? Okay, I don't. That's why it's not coming in my mind. Oh no, not that one. This Vayurgandha Nivashaya. Shariram Apnoti. So one transmigrates from one body point, just like this one. Okay, that's this thing. So the same analogy, the same example is also used, that just that there is a connection, okay, in terms of smelling that fragrance is coming, but there is no connection also. So it's like that. It's created, connected very superficially. Even though connected superficially, still he maintains his transcendental position. Okay, he's never impacted by the modes. That's what it means. He never comes under the influence of the modes. The modes are under him. He is never under the modes. Okay, so when we say the Supreme Lord is doing everything, no creation, this thing, that thing, so many pastimes being performed in material nature, when we say he is transcendental, it basically means that modes of material nature never have any impact on the Supreme Lord. So therefore all his pastimes are transcendental. Okay, from 37 says that the Lord is unknowable just by mental speculation. Nachasya kaschin nipunena dhatur evaiti jantu kumanisha utihi namani rupani mano vachobhihi santanvato natacharyami vagyaha. The foolish with a poor fund of knowledge cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words. Okay, so those who are foolish, those who are materially nipuna, okay, this word is used, no? Nipunaha means they are expert. Dexterity means expertise. Even though they are expert from the materialistic point of view, but because they have no fund of knowledge from the transcendental point of view, they cannot know the forms, the names and activities of the Lord. Okay, so understanding that the name is not different from the Lord and the glories of the Lord also is not possible just by mental speculation. Okay. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words. So fruity workers and mental speculators can never understand the absolute truth. Means karmis and jnanis cannot understand the absolute truth, because he is beyond the expression of mind and speech. Okay. There are two classes of materialists, namely the fruity workers and the empiric philosophers. The fruity workers have practically no information of the absolute truth. Right? They are engaged only in their materialistic activities. And the mental speculators, after being frustrated in fruitive activities, turn their faces towards the absolute truth and try to know him by mental speculation. Okay. But this is just jugglery, just like jugglery of a magician. And by being jugglery or being deceived by the jugglery of the Supreme Being, the non-devotees who may be very dexterous in fruitive work and mental speculation are always in ignorance. Okay. Many intelligent beings are there. There are great scientists, very thoughtful people, so many people, intellectual people, class of people are there. But just by that, they will not be able to understand the Supreme Lord. Okay, because they are strangle-held by illusion. Okay, strangle-held means just like you get hold of someone's neck. Okay, then he will not be able to do any activity for pressing his neck like this. Okay, so they are strangle-held by the illusion. So illusion has captured them such that they cannot do anything else. So they cannot understand the absolute truth. Anything, or they take it for granted that anything which has a form, a name and activities is but a product of material energy. For them, the Supreme Spirit is formless, nameless and inactive. Anything which has a form is a product of material energy for them. It's their intellectual exercise. Mental speculators equate the transcendental names and forms of the Lord with mundane names and forms they are in fact in ignorance. So these are the Mayavadis. Right? Those who think the name of the Lord is illusory, the form of the Lord is made of the modes of nature, is material. They are all called Mayavadis, and therefore they are in ignorance. Okay. The Lord is always transcendental position. 38 and 39 will tell that only devotional service reveals the Lord. Saveda dhatu padavim parasya duranta viryasya rathanga pani yo maya santataya nukritya bhajeta tatpada saroja gandham. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service onto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the creator of the universe in his full glory, power and transcendence. Okay. So unreserved and uninterrupted. Ahituki and Ahiyuta. And Apratihata is there. Unreserved and favorable service. Okay. Only pure devotees are qualified to know Krishna. Okay. Everyone within the creation of the Lord is rendering service to the Lord indirectly or directly. Either they serve the internal potency and through that serve the Lord, or they serve the material energy and indirectly serve the Lord in that way, because the material energy also is an energy of the Lord. Anyways, this will come in one of the purports, I think. So those who are rendering service indirectly, being forced by the illusory agent of the Lord, are rendering service onto him unfavorably. Indirect service means unfavorable, through the material nature, through the illusory agent. Rendering service onto him directly, under the direction of his beloved agent, which is the internal potency of the Lord, are rendering service onto him favorably. Okay. So everybody is a servant, either directly or indirectly. Directly means internal potency, indirectly means through the external potency of the Lord. And it is unfavorable to the Lord if it is external potency, and favorable to the Lord if it is under the direction of his beloved agent, which is the internal potency. Fruitive activities and speculation are no qualifications for entering the kingdom of God. You cannot enter the kingdom of God by fruitive activities and speculation. Atheha dhanya bhagavanta itham yad vasudeve khila lokanathe kurvanti sarvatmakamatma bhavam nayatra bhuyah parivarta ugraha. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love onto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes and guarantees 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. Okay, so only by making such inquiries can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. Only the devotees of the Lord can know him to a considerable extent, and no one else can know him at all. So even the devotees or the living entity cannot know the Lord completely. It's not possible. They can know only to some extent, to the extent that the internal potency reveals the Lord. Okay, the Lord can be known, or Krishna can be known only through his internal potency, and as much the internal potency reveals to living entity, that much we can know about Krishna. So that's why when devotional service is rendered under the direction of the internal potency, if we are sincere, if we are determined, and if we are confident in our devotional service, the internal potency then reveals the Lord. And that is how we gain positive transcendental knowledge about Krishna. If the internal potency does not reveal, we cannot know Krishna. It's not possible. Okay. Impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma, Super Soul, are included in the knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, including his multipotencies and expansions. Okay. Yeah. So text 40. Now from this, it's about the glories, about the glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, which is not different from Krishna. And within this section, the 43rd verse will answer the 6th question, the final answer, which is where did Dharma took shelter after Krishna left this world. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Sammitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishihi nishreyasaya lokasya dhanyam spasyayanam mahat. This scripture named Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So this is like a prelude to the answer that Suta Goswami is going to give, and this is the first time he is telling the sages that okay, what I am going to speak is Srimad Bhagavatam. He takes the name of Srimad Bhagavatam like this. He already made his intentions clear that he is going to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam when he prayed to Shukdev Goswami at the start of second chapter. Right? So he made his intentions clear that okay, he prayed to Shukdev Goswami and then he started speaking on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And now he specifically calls out the name of Srimad Bhagavatam and says that this is the literary incarnation of Krishna. Okay, so this is like an introduction that is giving to the answer to sixth question, which is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, who also is an incarnation of the Lord. It is meant for ultimate good of all people. Okay, which was also one of the questions, right? It was the first question. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Okay. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless sound representation of all Vedic knowledge and history. Okay. As God is all light, all bliss, and all perfection, so also is Srimad Bhagavatam. We can have all the transcendental light of the Supreme Brahman, Sri Krishna, from the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, provided it is received through the medium of the transparent spiritual master. Okay. Yeah. So one can derive from the study of the Bhagavatam all benefits that are possible to be derived from the personal presence of the Lord. It carries with it all the transcendental blessings of Lord Sri Krishna that we can expect from his personal contact. So just like Srila Prabhupada said that he will always be present in his books, and one can attain his direct association by reading his books repeatedly and continuously. So Krishna is directly present in this book Srimad Bhagavatam. They are non-different. Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna, and Krishna is non-different from his names, and Krishna is non-different from his pastimes, glories, and forms. So all of them are on the absolute realm. So whatever, when Krishna comes, then we pray. So many devotees pray to him. They express their prayers, or they ask for benedictions, or they ask for purification, so that they can render him devotional service. Everything can be done through the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam, which should be received by the transparent spiritual master, or the transparent medium of spiritual master. Okay. Tadidam grahayamasa sutamatmavatamvaram sarva vedetihasanam saram samudritam. Sri Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Right? Saram samudritam. Okay. Sarva Vedetihasanam saram samudritam. So all the Vedic literatures, all the itihasas, their essence, the essence of the essence is taken and presented by Srila Vyasadeva, who gave it to his son. Srila Prabhupada writes that Puranic histories are not imaginary. Sometimes the history of planets beyond this world appears to such men who to be unbelievable. But they do not know that different planets are not equal in all respects, and that therefore some of the historical facts derived from other planets do not correspond with the experience of this planet. Because we are limited, so we cannot have that experience. That does not mean that it does not exist. Okay. We should not therefore reject the stories and histories of the Puranas as imaginary. The great rishis like Vyasa had no business putting some imaginary stories in their literatures. Okay, so our authority comes from the acharyas. Okay, we accept something as fact, as factual, because it has been presented by the acharyas, who themselves have led their life in an exemplary manner. Okay, because people ask, outside people who have no idea about this, they'll ask, oh, this blind faith, why do you believe in all these things like this? But our faith is not blind because we are following the authorities. Only because we are following the parampara, therefore our faith is not blind. Our knowledge is not imaginary. because it's coming in disciplic succession. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes down the perfect knowledge means parampara. Right? We saw that. Perfect knowledge is parampara because it's perfect knowledge. Because it is coming in parampara, therefore it's perfect knowledge. And everybody else who's propagating other types of knowledge, because they are not in any disciplic succession, originating from Krishna, all the knowledge which they give is at the max a speculation. That's all. And it's not perfect knowledge. It's knowledge which will make you work with its material realm, but anyway it's temporary and it's mundane. So we cannot derive ultimate benefit out of it. So if we have to derive ultimate benefit, it should be perfect knowledge. And perfect knowledge means it should come in the line of disciplic succession or parampara. So therefore our faith in this whole process of Krishna consciousness stands on the authority of our spiritual master and of the acharyas, who are themselves the examples of what they preach about. Okay, so this is very important. Our faith is not blind. Okay, our faith or our process, whatever we live, our whole life is spiritual. Our whole life is meant to be dedicated to Krishna consciousness. And our authority and our conviction comes from the authority of the acharyas. It's very important to understand. So we should never get bewildered that, oh, why am I doing this? Or whether something else is proper, or material world has something to offer. These people speak like this, but I see outside people, they are also happy, they seem happy, they seem to enjoy, they go here, there, they have all opulences. But no, all these things will come and go because they are not following any authority. Their authority is only their mental speculation. They think that by undergoing all these processes of sense gratification, of satisfying themselves, they will become happy. But no, that's not possible. Only devotional service is the only way which satisfies the soul. You have already seen this in the second chapter, correct? So therefore we should never get deviated into all these things. Our authority comes from the acharyas. Because they have no other business. They don't have to take so much, Srila Prabhupada does not have to take so much effort to go to America if he himself. What business does he have to collect so many followers at the age of 70, making so many temples and getting so much pride or something out of it? No business whatsoever. Correct? So they work only for the benefit of others. So this we will see, this point we will see, working for benefit of others, specifically in the 4th chapter, where we will see the activities of Srila Vyasadeva. Okay. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of the essence. The specific significance of these histories is that they are all connected with the activities of the Lord in a different time and atmosphere. So this is what we discuss now. Because this Mahapurana, Srimad Bhagavatam is categorized under Mahapurana, and it will have all the histories of all people who have lived in bygone ages. But the speciality of this is everything is in relation to Krishna. That is the speciality. That's why it is transcendental. Okay. Vedic literatures is like the milk ocean of knowledge. Cream or butter is the most palatable essence of milk. And so also Srimad Bhagavatam. For it contains all palatable, instructive and authentic versions of different activities of the Lord and His devotees. And accepted Srimad Bhagavatam from non-Vaishnavas is spiritual death. Okay, Srila Prabhupada says. Those who are not strictly in the Vaishnava discipline should not make a business of this Bhagavatam and become a cause of spiritual death for so many hearers. So those who make business of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam without specifically explaining the actual essence. We are speaking about the essence of all Vedic literatures is Srimad Bhagavatam. And what does Srimad Bhagavatam speak? It speaks about the devotional service of the Lord. Right? There is metaphysics involved, there is Sankhya philosophy, there is fruitive activities also. But all of them have Krishna as the center. All these activities are mentioned as with Krishna as the center. And devotional service is established as the primemost activity of the living entity. So those people who make business of the Bhagavatam, just reciting the stories, entertaining the people, but not invoking any kind of devotion or any kind of impetus for devotional service within the heart, they are just becoming a cause of spiritual death for their hearers, because they are just making business, earning money through recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, Bhagavatam is meant to establish devotional service to the Lord, and it should invoke the impetus to render devotional service to the Lord. That's the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the goal or purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. 42.
But
Yes.
Prabhupada explains this, he quotes from Maxim. This one man's food is another man's poison. Means how it you have to
Where is
connect
it?
to the, means after this consume.
Kill them.
Which
Down.
one is this?
Or
Down.
down.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. We should always remember. Okay, considering the different situations of different planets and also time and circumstances, there is nothing wonderful in the stories of the Puranas, nor are they imaginary. We should always remember the maxim that one man's food is another man's poison. We should not therefore reject the histories and stories and histories of the Puranas as imaginary. The great rishis like Vyasa had no business putting some imaginary stories in their literatures. Yeah, I'll get back to you. Okay, let's see in which context Prabhupada writes this.
Proof. Yes. They are different according to the situation. Let's say fish can live in water, but we cannot.
Yes. Yeah, okay, yes. So the context is that beyond this history, so sometimes the history of the planets beyond this world appears to such men to be unbelievable. So people who are living in other realms, when we speak about the heavenly planets or the lower planetary systems and all, okay, it looks like very fascinating, or it looks like imaginary to them. But still, okay, considering then, but they do not correspond with the experience of this planet. Considering the different situation of different planets and also time and circumstances, there is nothing wonderful in the stories of the Puranas, nor are they imaginary. We should always remember the maxim that one man's food is another man's poison. Okay, basically means that because we are not able to do something here, does not mean that people in the other realms also will not be able to do that. Okay, so when we say, okay, Vyasadeva is still living, he's been living for 5,000 years, then people question, how is that possible? Okay, how is that possible? No, I cannot do this. Obviously, I am not living for 1,000 years, 5,000 years. But then, we are histories of sages, living for 5,000 years. Markandeya Rishi living for so many years, like this, and performing so many glorious activities. Heavenly planet, so much enjoyment is there, like this. So, we are trying to put, or we are trying to try to understand, or try to see them from our point of view, and we think, oh, it is not possible. But actually, it is not. That does not mean that because it is inconceivable for us, does not mean it does not exist. For us, it might look poisonous. Okay, something might look poisonous for us, but no, it's not poisonous actually. So it's in that context that you have to take. Okay, this is my understanding. No, I'll read this again, and if I can find out or if I can understand something more, we'll discuss about that. Okay. Yeah, no, we have less time. We have to finish fast, so at least this chapter. Satu samshravayamasa maharajam parikshitam prayopavishtam gangayam paritam paramarshibihi. Shukdev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Okay, so this is a disciplic succession. Vyasadeva compiled it. He gave it to his son Shukdev Goswami, and Shukdev Goswami gave it to Maharaj Parikshit. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes about receiving Bhagavatam in Parampara, and he said, many rishis, philosophers, mystics, they all came and suggested many different duties to Parikshit Maharaj. But at last it was settled that he would hear from Shukdev Goswami about Lord Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada also speaks about how Shankaracharya admitted that what he had preached in the flowery grammatical interpretations of the Vedanta Sutra cannot help one at the time of death. At this critical hour of death, one must recite the name of Govinda. Okay. So this Bhagavatam is what should be heard. This is the most important. It's the most important scripture or most important message, or the last immediate duty is to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. We are all going to die at one point of time. Okay. And we do not know when we are going to die. So therefore it's our immediate attention that we should do it as soon as possible. Okay. We should not think that I'm only 19 years old, 20 years old. Another at least minimum 40 is there. No, we do not know. Okay. So this Bhagavatam study should be approached in all urgency. Okay. It should be done with all sincerity, that we do not know when we are going to leave this world. Therefore, we fixed in devotional service, study Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So, finally, the answer to 6th question. Krishne Sudhamo Pagate Dharma Jnanadibhis Saha Kalo Nashtadrishamesha Puranarko Dhunoditaha. This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Okay. So, when Krishna descends to the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia in his internal potency, which is called Atma Maya. Okay. And the same is available in Srimad Bhagavatam. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the course of religion. Real religion means to know God, our relation with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. Okay. And people of this world are mostly engaged in sense gratification under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, and salvation. So they are just a royal edition of animals. They cannot see anything beyond the needs of the body. They can risk their lives to become a dog or hog just after leaving the present body. Okay, so therefore, Purana Arko Dhunoditaha, and this Purana has arisen just like a sun to remove all the darkness. Okay, so after, prior to his departure, Krishna empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus, both Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. And if men of this Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can see also Lord Sri Krishna in person. Okay, study Srimad Bhagavatam, try to understand it, try to render devotional service to Bhagavatam. You can see Krishna directly, face to face. They are identical. Final verse. Tatra kirtayato vipra viprasher bhuri tejasah aham chadhyagamam tatra nivishtastanugrahat soham vashravayishyami yathadhitam yathamati. O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadeva Goswami recited the Bhagavatam there, in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. Yathadhitam yathamati. So Bhagavatam should be heard from a representative of Shukadeva Goswami. Okay. Basically, parampara. Here we have heard the parampara of his Bhagavatam. Krishna empowered Vyasadeva to compile Srimad Bhagavatam through the agency of Narada. So, Vyasadeva, then he taught it to Shukadeva Goswami, then Shukadeva Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit, and also to Suta Goswami. So, they are coming in disciplic succession. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Shri Krishna in the pages of the Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Shukadeva Goswami. One has to learn the Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukadeva Goswami and no one else, if one at all wants to see Lord Krishna in the pages. Right? So again and again Srila Prabhupada makes this point. He said Bhagavatam, in Srimad Bhagavatam we can see Krishna directly. Okay. And so it must be heard from a self-realized soul who comes in parampara, just like Shukadeva Goswami. So therefore Suta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami because he wants to present the very same message which he received from the great learned Brahmana. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the truth, or one must realize the text with proper attention. Now this is important, no? Just simply hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. So this is also applicable to this Bhagavatam speakers. These professional speakers, they might decide. Okay, and because most of them are materially motivated, or they are not coming in proper parampara, and they might even recite the stories, but still, that purification should be there. Or it's like the sarpochishta. It will happen like this. So one should hear with rapt attention from the real person. And then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The third time Srila Prabhupada writes this. The secret of knowing the Bhagavatam is mentioned here. This is the secret. So purity of mind necessary for hearing with rapt attention. So no one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. And no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, faring and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Okay. So fourth time, the same purport, Srila Prabhupada writes this. That you can see, or we can see Sri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. Okay. So those who say, where is God? Show me God. Give them Srimad Bhagavatam. Say Bhagavatam, take it and realize Lord. Sure. Okay, so we have to stop here. We cannot see the breakup of 4, but 4th chapter is small. I think we'll be able to finish it faster next session, probably in 1.5 hours. And then we will just, if possible, if time permits, we'll just have a very quick summary of all the 3 chapters, because we'll have a test on Saturday. Okay. So I'll stop here. It's 12:05, so if you have any questions, we can discuss for another 5 minutes, or we can take it in the next class. What do you want to do?
It's link between the 39th verse and 40.
39 and 40. Okay. It's just a direct answer to the 6th question. So when he says only devotional service reveals the Lord, then so what all the questions, all the 5 questions which have been asked by the Shaunaka Rishi, Shaunaka and other rishis is answered till this point. And then they also asked him to speak about the glories of Sri Krishna and other things. All the other questions were there. Okay, about the incarnations, about the Purusha Avtaras, about the glories of the Lord, and what is the best welfare for every living entity, and where did Dharma take shelter, and which gives us ultimate satisfaction. So everything culminates in Srimad Bhagavatam. So finally, while answering the 6th question, he's saying, okay, this is the culmination. So therefore, I am going to speak Srimad Bhagavatam to you. After establishing that devotional service is the only way to reveal the Lord. Okay. See, in the 38 and 39 it says, revealing the Lord. Devotional service reveals the Lord. Those were the verses. Okay. And when we are glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam, then Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna. It's an answer to question 6 also. Okay. This is the one which is going to show the light in the age of Kali, and this is the one which is going to reveal Krishna. You see, right? Bhagavatam is going to reveal Krishna in the pages. That's what Srila Prabhupada writes 4 times in that purport. So devotional service reveals the Lord, Bhagavatam reveals the Lord. Okay, so it's that kind of connection. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is glorious and it answers the 6th question. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.